Hello, and welcome to Stories from India, a podcast where we talk about myths, legends, and folk tales from India. I'm your host, Narada Muni, and I'm a mythological character myself. I have the gift of eternal life and knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. By profession, I'm a traveling musician and a storyteller. So the way I'm doing my job is by podcast. In this episode, we are going to continue the story of the churning of the ocean, or Samudra Manthan. If you haven't heard the last episode, I highly recommend that you check it out. But here's a short recap anyway. The Devs were led by their king Indra, but he had offended the wrong person, and that was the Rishi Durvasa. In a Thanos-like snap your fingers moment, Durvasa cursed their home in heaven, their magic wishing tree, and everything else they enjoyed. He cursed those things out of existence. The Devs and Indra appealed to my dad, Brahma, the creator of the universe. But my dad could not help. He directed them to Vishnu instead, the preserver. Which was the right call, because Vishnu had just the solution for them. But to execute it, he told them they needed to collaborate with their enemies, the Asurs. We'll pick up the story right there, at Vishnu's home, which was actually in the coils of Sheshnag, the ultimate snake, who floated in the ocean of milk. I was there in person, so this is an eyewitness account. Indra had just agreed to have a conversation with Bali, the emperor of the Asurs, and was now waiting for Vishnu to explain exactly how he was going to get his home back. Vishnu spread out a huge blueprint for a device that he called the LHC, or Large Hill Churner. I don't get this, said Indra. This is clearly Mount Mandar on the blueprint, which is a mountain. Why are you calling it a hill? Is there also a hill involved? Never mind that, said Vishnu. That reference won't be clear for several thousand years. And what does that word mean? Churning, asked Indra. Vishnu replied, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, it means to agitate milk or cream in order to make butter. What in God's name? I mean, what in your name is the Oxford English Dictionary? Vishnu replied, another 21st century reference you won't quite get yet. I'm getting lost here, said Indra. I'm looking for my home back, my tree, my cow, my dancers, my rock band. I didn't say anything about wanting my butter back. Sure, maybe I lost a bit of butter in the fridge, along with everything else that I lost. But I don't just want my butter back, I want my home back, he said, clearly in anguish now. Vishnu replied, you know what? You're not any help to me right now. Just go away. Talk to Bali and sign him on as a collaborator. He just needs to show up and help, that's all. Indra was astonished. That's all? He's just going to help me out of the goodness of his heart? If you ask me, he's going to have me shot on sight for what I did during our last war. You lost that war, reminded Vishnu. Anyway, go get his buy-in Tell him you're going to synthesize the nectar of immortality. Tell him I sent you. He'll believe you, all right? Am I going to give him the nectar of immortality, really? Asked Indra, incredulously. Of course not, said Vishnu. But that's just between you and me. Now go and stop bothering me. I have lots of work to do on this project of mine. He slowly put a hard hat on and said, Maybe I'll call this the Man Hat On project. Luckily for Indra, Bali agreed to meet him. Ha ha ha, roared Bali. You're here to surrender unconditionally, are you? You wish, said Indra. I'm here to talk because something much, much bigger is at stake. Vishnu sent me. We are going to make the potion of immortality. We need you to help. I don't have all the resources. Bali asked, shocked. You mean you're just inviting us to drink this potion if we help you make it? No strings attached? None, Indra said. What's the point though? Bali asked. If we are all immortal, no one has an advantage over the other. Oh, I get it now. No one has an advantage over the other. You don't want either of us to have an advantage in the future. That sounds fair to me. Sign me up. That was not the thought that Indra had, but Bali had agreed. So whatever floats his boat, Indra thought. They signed a memorandum of understanding and agreed to meet at the appointed day near Vishnu's home. Meanwhile, Indra had a to-do list that Vishnu had given him. He looked at the items on it. 1 snake, Vasuki Nag from around Shiva's neck, 1 mountain, Mandar. Hand out invitations to the event to all the major gods. In particular, get commitment from Brahma and Shiva and Parvati. Okay, cool. Should be easy, Indra thought, and he set off. A few weeks later, at the appointed date and time, as the guests started coming in, handing over their car keys to the valet, checking in their coats, the whole atmosphere began to change with the anticipation of what was about to happen. Vishnu was there, making polite conversation with Brahma and myself. All the Asurs had arrived punctually. There were a few nervous glances between the Asurs and the Devs, but the treaty between Indra and Bali held them in check. Indra stepped up, fashionably late as usual. He balanced a mountain, Mount Mandar, on his pinky. Howdy, y'all, he said. Vasuki, the huge snake around Shiva's neck, slid off and immediately wrapped itself around the mountain. Someone had learned their lines well, I thought. Vishnu spoke up, in a voice loud enough to be heard by everyone assembled. You guys read the instructions I emailed last night, right? I need all the Devs on one side and all the Asurs on the other. And you guys have to pull alternately. Now, any questions before we lower the mountain and begin? Just a minute, said Bali. I have an objection. Your plan called for us to hold Vasuki's tail, and the Devs get to hold the head. I'm not cool with that. The tail, it's the lower part of the animal. It's impure. The head is the most important part of the body. Fine, The Devs can take the tail. You guys have the head, said Vishnu. I don't really care either way. Let's just get this show on the road. And he was careful to conceal his little victory smile. His little reverse psychology gamble had worked just as he had intended. Vishnu announced, Positions! Devs and Asurs quickly assembled themselves into two long lines, the head of each line facing each other, just as they would during a tug of war. Except this was not a tug of war. This was instead going to be cooperative pulling. When the Devs would pull, the Asurs would do nothing, and vice versa. Vishnu continued, All right, gents. Remember your instructions. You have to cooperate. That is the key word. It's ABC. Always be churning. Always be cooperating. Do that, and soon you'll be in the high energy range, and we'll be synthesizing new stuff. Brahma here, as the neutral party, is going to inventory all the things that we create. We'll divide up the spoils. New stuff? You mean new kinds of butter? Asked a Dev, who hadn't read his briefing kit fully. When's the first break? Asked a lazy Asur, but didn't press it after he got a hard stare from both Vishnu and Bali. When everyone seemed ready, Vishnu levitated Mount Mandar off of Indra's hands and right onto the spot in the middle between the Devs and the Asurs. Still following the script, Vasuki, who was coiled around the mountain, extended his head and tail in each direction, so that soon the Asurs had grabbed the head and the Devs had the tail. Ready? Steady? Churn, said Vishnu, and the action began. There were two problems right away. The Asurs realized that maybe holding the head of Vasuki was a bad choice after all, because Vasuki, being a typical celestial snake, emitted poisonous fumes from its mouth. And he had had bad breath besides. But there was nothing the Asurs could do about it. Hadn't they themselves vetoed Vishnu's suggestion that they hold the tail? It would be embarrassing now to admit that they were wrong. Luckily, they had some masks with them, and those provided some basic protection from the fumes. The other problem was that the mountain began to sink into the ocean. Normally, a churning rod shouldn't do that, and if the Devs and the Asurs were pulling hard enough, that would not have happened. But I guess their technique wasn't perfect, having never ever done this before. They needed a little boost. Vishnu, from the sidelines, observed this right away. He took one of the two bottles from his pocket, the one labeled Kurma. He quickly drank its contents and leaped into the ocean. Within seconds, he had transformed into a giant turtle. It was so huge that the entire base of Mount Mandar could fit easily on its back. And that was exactly the idea Vishnu had. Kurma swam under the mountain and then upward, bearing the load of the mountain and making sure that it wouldn't sink. What's more, the turtle kept swimming in place, and with its broad fins, helped in the churning action. At this point, the churning entered into a steady rhythm. The Devs and the Asurs even seemed to be enjoying this. And why not? Vishnu was taking on the entire mountain load. Just pulling Vasuki was a piece of cake for them. They continued pulling for a while, and then the first new things started to appear. My dad, Brahma, the creator, was responsible for cataloging and stock keeping these new gifts that emerged. He was about to get very busy. We'll leave it here. We'll continue the story this weekend, where we'll see the kinds of stuff that emerged. And we'll get to see another avatar of Vishnu. If you'd like a visual representation of what the churning looked like, I've linked some pictures on the site, sfipodcast.com. Check them out. One of them is a model of this at an airport in Bangkok, Thailand. You may have come across the concept of a turtle holding up the world before. There are examples from Hindu, Chinese, and North American mythology. Kurma was holding up just a single mountain, but there is the general theme of a turtle providing stability and preventing a critical land mass from sinking into an infinite ocean. Some people identify Mandar Parbat, which is a 700-foot tall hill in the state of Bihar, as the Mount Mandar. It certainly fits in that it was a hill and not a mountain. And the name is suggestive. But, I say, have a look at the picture I linked and tell me if you honestly believe it could serve as a churning rod. If you have comments or suggestions, or if there are any particular stories you'd like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or tweet at sfipodcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. Thanks to all of you listeners for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. I'll see you next time.